Dhurandhar 2 is smashing records after records at the box office. But is it a problem for cinema? In 1896, economist Vilfredo Pareto observed that in Italy, nearly 80% of the land was owned by about 20% of the population. While studying wealth distribution, he realized that this uneven pattern appeared repeatedly across different systems, a phenomena now known as Pareto Principle. This principle can also be applied to the Indian film industry. In many years, a small number of films generate the majority of total box office revenue. While the imbalance is not as extreme as the classic 80 to 20 ratio, the top films in the industry often earn more than 50% of the total revenue generated. At a recent roundtable, film producer Siddharth Roy Kapur pointed out something interesting. More than 40% of last year's Bollywood box office collections came from just three films: Chhaava, Saiyaara, and Dhurandhar. And if you look at the top 10 films, they together make up almost 80 to 90% of total revenue. As he put it, that is not a healthy industry, it's a sign of winner takes all market. Now, he was talking specifically about Bollywood. But the bigger question is this just a Bollywood problem or is it something happening across the Indian cinema as a whole? To understand that, we need to take a step back and look at the box office trends of Indian cinema over the last 3 years. Indian cinema had a record breaking year in 2023, with total box office collections reaching an all time high of 12,226 crores. The top four films of the year were Jawan with 1,160 crores, Pathan with 1,050 crores, Animal with 900 crores, and Gadar 2 with 690 crores. Together, these four films earned around 3,800 crores worldwide gross at the box office. When we compare this with the total Indian box office revenue of 12,226 crores, it means that just four films contributed roughly 30% of the entire market in 2023. Just imagine, in over 2,500 films, only four films earned this much amount of money. A similar trend continued in 2024. Indian cinema generated approximately 11,833 crores at the box office during the year. The top four films were Pushpa 2 with 1,790 crores, Kalki 2898 AD with 1,040 crores, Sri 2 with 875 crores, and Goat with 455 crores. Together, these four films earned around 4,160 crores at the box office. When compared with the total annual revenue of 11,833 crores, it means that just four films contributed roughly 35% of the entire Indian box office in 2024. Indian cinema once again had a record breaking year in 2025, with total domestic box office collections reaching 13,395 crores. And the top four films of the year were Dhurandhar with 1,305 crores, Kantara Chapter 1 with 852 crores, Chhaava with 808 crores, and to everyone's surprise, Saiyaara with 570 crores. Together, these four films earned around 3,535 crores at the box office. When compared with the total industry revenue of 13,395 crores, this means that the top four films alone generated roughly 26 to 27% of the entire Indian box office in 2025. Now, by showing these numbers, I am not saying that Dhurandhar doesn't deserve to earn this kind of money. In fact, I hope it earns so much that it shatters every single box office record in history. But when an industry becomes this blatantly top heavy, real problems start creeping in. Mid-budget films are a necessity in cinema. I will make a separate video explaining this in detail. Do subscribe if you want it. But for now, just understand this. Mid-budget films typically fall in the 50 to 90 crores range and they act as a cushion for theater economics. High-budget films are high risk, high reward. Low-budget films are low risk, low returns. But mid-budget films sit right in between. Moderate risk, moderate returns. And as the industry becomes increasingly top heavy, these mid range films are starting to disappear, which means the market begins to depend on just a few big hits, and that's dangerous. Because instead of having a stable, consistent flow of revenue, the entire system becomes highly unstable. The mid budget films are also important because while the high budget films typically have some of the common tropes, but these mid range films are a way in for creative and unique cinema like Masan or Tumbad etc. Now, moving to our next issue, which is you must have noticed that in the past few years there has been a significant rise in sequels, remakes, and franchise films. And why is that? Because producers have become risk averse. They only want to invest in projects that follow a tried and tested formula because to them that feels like the most bankable option. But this creates a serious problem. Creative storytelling takes a hit. In our everyday conversations, we often say that Bollywood doesn't have talented filmmakers, but that's not entirely true. What's actually happening is they are not getting enough opportunities to showcase their vision. An example of this is Sujoy Ghosh wrote SRK's King, but he had to leave that project because he was being asked to make the film more massy, which was never his vision. Original ideas are either rejected, delayed, or forced to fit into a safe commercial template. And over time, this leads to an industry where everything starts to feel the same. Same stories, same structure, and same moments, just with different actors. And when the film starts chasing safety, cinema stops taking risks, and that's when the audience loses their interest. This becomes very obvious when theatre owners start giving most of their screens to big films. And on paper, it makes sense. Big films bring big crowds. But there's a problem here. When the majority of the screens are occupied by these big releases, smaller films don't get a fair chance no matter how good they actually are. And a recent example of this is Project Hail Mary. This film was actually made for IMAX, but it didn't get proper IMAX shows in India because Dhurandhar 2 was already occupying those screens. And the irony, Dhurandhar 2 isn't even a film designed for IMAX, and that tells you everything. There are several other problems as well, and one of the biggest is this a lack of variety in mainstream cinema. Because when the industry becomes top heavy, most of the attention and resources go into a very specific type of film large scale, formula driven mass entertainers. Now, there's nothing wrong with these films, but when they start dominating the market, other kinds of stories get pushed to the sidelines. And over time, the range of films playing in the theaters becomes very limited. It's not that audience don't want different stories, it's that they rarely get the option to choose them on a big scale. So eventually the theatrical experience itself starts feeling repetitive, not because the audience is tired of cinema, but because cinema at the top stops offering enough variety. There are several other problems as well, like the lack of opportunities for newcomers and the over dependence on big stars. But the real question is why did this happen? To understand this, here are some of the key reasons, in my opinion, that have led the industry in this direction. If we talk about the pre OTT era, people used to go to theaters regularly, even for mid scale or small scale films. But this habit has been completely disrupted by OTT platforms. Now people simply wait a few weeks for a film to release on OTT and then they watch it comfortably at home. They only go to theaters for big event cinema type films. And this is one of the core reasons why the industry is becoming top heavy. But the audience is not entirely to blame here. I think there are two major reasons behind this shift. Number 1, the ease of access to films on OTT platforms. Number 2, the theatrical experience itself has become very expensive. Theaters almost feel like they are trying to extract as much money as possible from the audience with constantly rising ticket prices and absurdly high cost for snacks. So when the comfort increases at home and the cost increases at theaters, the audience doesn't really have a choice. In today's industry, marketing is everything. Big films spend massive amounts on promotions from trailers to social media campaigns to nationwide hype. On the other hand, small or mid budget films simply don't have that kind of marketing power. As a result, many genuinely good films go unnoticed because the audience isn't even aware that they exist. And in today's attention economy, visibility is everything. This is exactly why filmmakers like S.S. Rajamouli and his team starts promotions years in advance. For instance, early promotional groundwork around Varanasi has already begun, even though the film is still far from release. Because in today's market, making a film is only half the battle. Keeping it in public conversation is the other half. From announcements to release, an enormous amount of money has to be spent just to stay visible and build hype. And unfortunately, the resources required to do this are only accessible to a select few films. In today's cinema, it's not the best movie that wins, it's the movie that's the most visible one. There may be several other factors contributing to this phenomena, but the key thing to understand is this isn't just a phase, it's actually a structural shift. The industry is slowly becoming top heavy, where a few films succeed massively and the most others struggle to even survive. And the biggest loss here isn't just financial, it's creative. Because when only safe films get made, cinema stops taking risks, and when cinema stops taking risks, it stops evolving.